Ray Sullivan was a man who lived with a loaded shotgun in the passenger seat and a worn-out Bible on the dashboard, caught between the violence of the world and the silence of God. At 58 years old, Ray wasn't just tired, he was hunted. Or at least, that's what the cold knot in his stomach told him every single day. To the locals in the dusty towns of West Texas, he was just a rough-around-the-edges electrician, the guy you called at 3 a.m. when a transformer blew and the lights went out. But inside the cramped cab of his pickup truck, Ray was a man under siege. His life was a crime scene of broken relationships and inexplicable failures. His wife had left him 8 years ago, taking the house, the dog, and the warmth, leaving him in a drafty trailer that smelled of mildew and regret. His son, Michael, hadn't spoken to him in 5 years, a silence that hurt more than any physical blow. Every business venture he tried crumbled to dust. Every friend he made eventually turned into a stranger. Ray didn't call this bad luck. He called it a curse. Raised in a tent revival church that preached fire, brimstone, and spiritual warfare, Ray was convinced that something dark was attached to him. He felt a heavy presence in the corners of his room at night. He felt cold spots in the blistering heat of the Texas summer. He believed, with the desperate certainty of a drowning man, that he was being targeted by demonic forces, that he was a pawn in a cosmic game he didn't understand. On the night of November 14th, the game changed. Ray was driving down a desolate stretch of County Road 9, miles from civilization, heading to fix a power outage at a remote ranch. The storm was raging outside, mirroring the storm inside his chest. He was gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, muttering a prayer that sounded more like a threat. Angry at his ex-wife, angry at his boss, and furious at God for leaving him in this mess. Then the world ended. It didn't end with a bang, but with a glitch. His GPS screen didn't just lose signal. It scrambled into a chaotic mess of digital static before going pitch black. His cell phone, resting in the cup holder, emitted a high-pitched screech that pierced his ears and died instantly. The headlights of his 2015 Ford pickup flickered once, twice, and then extinguished completely, plunging him into a darkness so absolute it felt like a physical weight. The engine cut out. Ray was plunging down a slick Texas highway at 60 miles per hour in total blindness. He slammed on the brakes, the truck fishtailing violently on the wet asphalt, before skidding to a halt on the muddy shoulder. Silence, absolute, heavy, unnatural silence. The rain stopped as if someone had turned off a faucet. Ray grabbed his heavy flashlight, his hand shaking uncontrollably. He didn't think alternator failure. He didn't think dead battery. He thought, they found me. He stepped out of the truck, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the thick mist. He expected to see a downed power line sparking on the wet road. He expected to see a deer. What he saw defied every law of physics he had spent 40 years working with. Hovering about 10 feet off the ground in the middle of the pasture was a structure. It wasn't the shiny chrome saucer from the sci-fi movies. It was dark, matte, and textured like ancient slate, a monolith floating in the air. But around its perimeter, a soft, pulsating blue light bathed the wet grass in an eerie, underwater glow. The air smelled of ozone and burnt copper, the scent of a lightning strike frozen in time. A ramp descended silently from the craft. Ray reached for the heavy pipe wrench in his tool belt, his only weapon against the apocalypse. A figure emerged. It was tall, slender, wearing a suit that seemed to shift with the light, like oil on water. It had large dark eyes that reflected Ray's flashlight beam, holding a gaze that was neither human nor animal. Ray froze. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. The end times. The great deception his pastor had warned him about. He was staring at a demon in the flesh. But the figure didn't attack. It didn't screech. It pointed. It pointed a long, grey finger toward an open panel on the side of the ship where sparks were showering down into the mud. The blue light of the ship was flickering, dying. The creature looked at Ray, then at the tool belt around his waist. It was an impossible request, communicated without words, a desperate plea from one engineer to another. The ship is broken. You are an electrician. Fixed Ray stood there in the mud, the rain beginning to fall again. His worldview was colliding with his reality. His church had taught him that aliens were demons in disguise, fallen angels sent to deceive mankind. He was terrified. He wanted to run back to the truck and lock the doors. But his legs wouldn't move. The curiosity, or perhaps the sheer absurdity of the moment, held him fast. The being stepped closer. It wasn't aggressive. It seemed weak, drained. Ray gripped his wrench, his fear turning into a defensive rage. He looked into the alien's eyes, and he had to know. He couldn't die without knowing. He summoned every ounce of courage left in his broken soul and shouted over the low hum of the ship. I know what you are. Ray yelled, his voice cracking in the wet air. You're a liar. You're a deceiver. The alien stopped. It tilted its head, observing him like a specimen. Tell me. Ray screamed, tears mixing with the rain on his face. Are you a demon? Are you a fallen angel? The answer Ray received did not come from a mouth. It arrived in his mind with the clarity of a church bell ringing in a quiet valley. We are not demons, Ray Sullivan, and we are not angels. But your question is closer to the truth than you know. The alien projected an image into Ray's mind, a spectrum of light, vibrating and shifting, a visual language of pure physics. The beings you call fallen angels exist, the entity revealed, its mental voice calm, resonant, and utterly devoid of deception. But they are not monsters with horns sent by an angry god. They are spirits trapped in low frequencies. They are consciousnesses that have become addicted to gravity, to anger, to fear. They have lowered their vibrations so much that they cannot ascend. They are heavy, Ray, and they are looking for someone to carry their weight. The alien looked at Ray, piercing his soul with a truth that hurt more than the fear. You feel cursed. You feel hunted. It is not because God has abandoned you. It is because you are broadcasting the signal they feed on. Your anger is a beacon. Your fear is an open door. You are not being possessed. You are being resonated. To truly understand why the universe parked a starship in front of Ray Sullivan's pickup truck, you have to understand the geography of his soul. It was a landscape scorched by 40 years of invisible warfare. Ray was a man who lived in the past tense. He was defined not by what he was doing, but by what he had lost. At 58, he was a master electrician, a man who could trace a short circuit through a mile of conduit, yet he was utterly blind to the wiring of his own life. He lived in a rusted Airstream trailer on the edge of town, a metal box that rattled when the wind blew and froze when the temperature dropped. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee, old paper, and a profound, suffocating loneliness. Ray didn't just have a bad run of luck. He had a biography of disasters that defied statistical probability. 8 years ago, His life had been a picture of the American dream. He had a 3-bedroom house, a wife named Ellen who made the best pecan pie in the county, and a son, Michael, who was the quarterback of the high school team. Then the foundation cracked. It started with the arguments, small fissures that grew into canyons. Then came the drinking, the shouting matches that echoed off the walls, and finally, the silence. When Ellen left, she didn't just take her clothes. She took the color out of the world. She took the noise of a living home and left behind a quiet so heavy it felt like it could crush a man's chest. But the real wound, the one that refused to scab over, was Michael. His son hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. The last time they saw each other was at a gas station. Michael had looked at Ray with eyes full of a terrifying indifference worse than Haytan said, "You're just ... Heavy, Dad. Being around you is like drowning." Then he drove away. Ray called him every Christmas, every birthday. The calls went straight to voicemail. That silence was a physical thing. It sat in the passenger seat of Ray's truck. It ate dinner with him. It slept in the empty room down the hall. Ray filled that silence with anger, because anger was the only fuel he had left. He worked the graveyard shift, fixing blown transformers and downed lines in the middle of the night, because the darkness outside matched the darkness inside. He convinced himself that he preferred the night, but the truth was, he was hiding. He was hiding from the happy families in the grocery store. He was hiding from the pity in the eyes of the people who knew him before. This accumulation of loss had curdled into a specific belief system. Ray Sullivan believed he was cursed. He didn't mean this metaphorically. He meant it literally. Raised in the shadow of a tent revival church, where the preachers screamed about the devil prowling like a lion, Ray had internalized a theology of fear. He believed that there was a target painted on his back in the spiritual realm. As a child, he would lie awake under his quilt, terrified of the shadows in the corner, convinced that demons were waiting for him to close his eyes. He felt watched. He felt hunted. As he grew older, the monsters under the bed didn't disappear. They just changed shape. They became the bad luck that ruined his business. They became the unseen forces that turned his family against him. And in the dark corners of the internet, where Ray spent his lonely nights, they transformed into the Greys, the reptilians, the interdimensional entities that the conspiracy theorists warned about. Ray's mind was a fortress under siege. He saw the world not as a place of opportunity, but as a battlefield where he was losing. He believed that God existed, yes. He went to church, sat in the back pew, and sang the hymns. But to Ray, God felt like a distant, negligent landlord who collected the rent, raised tithing and prayers, but refused to fix the broken heater or kick out the squatters. Ray prayed. Lord, how he prayed. He spent nights on his knees on the cold linoleum of his trailer, begging for a break. "Bring Michael back," he would whisper. "Fix my finances. Take this heavy feeling away." He would bargain. He would plead. And when the sun rose and the phone remained silent and the bank account remained empty, the pleading turned into resentment. He started to view prayer not as a conversation, but as a transaction that had been declined. He felt betrayed. He had followed the rules. He hadn't cheated on his wife. He hadn't stolen. So why was he being punished? This resentment was dangerous. It was a slow-acting poison. Ray didn't realize it, but his anger at God and his obsession with demons were creating a specific energetic signature. He was vibrating at the frequency of He woke up every morning expecting a fight. He drove to work expecting something to break. He looked at the sky expecting judgment, and the universe, acting as a giant mirror, obliged him. It gave him more things to fight, more things to break, and more reasons to feel judged. On the night of the encounter, this frequency was at its peak. Ray was driving to the remote ranch job, and his mind was a storm of toxic thoughts. He was replaying the argument with his ex-wife from 8 years ago, polishing the memory until the anger shone like a diamond. He was composing a mental letter to his son, full of accusations and guilt. He was screaming internally at the rain, at the mud, at the job he hated. "Why me?" he muttered, gripping the steering wheel. "Why does everything I touch turn to ash? What do you want from me?" He wasn't asking a question. He was issuing a challenge to the Almighty. He felt righteous in his anger. He felt that his suffering made him special, a martyr in a cosmic tragedy. He felt powerful in his rage. But underneath the rage, buried deep in the bedrock of his psyche, was a terrified little boy who just wanted to know why he wasn't lovable. This was the frequency of despair. It wasn't just sadness. It was a dense, magnetic field of negativity. It was a signal so strong it was practically visible. Ray Sullivan was driving down a Texas highway broadcasting a distress beacon into the cosmos. He thought he was alone. He thought no one was listening to his internal monologue of misery. But he was wrong. Something was listening. Something that resonated with that exact frequency of heaviness. When the alien ship appeared, Ray's immediate thought wasn't curiosity. It wasn't wonder. It was confirmation. See. His mind screamed triumphantly. "I was right. The demons are here. They've come to finish the job." He interpreted the event through the lens of his fear because fear was the only lens he had left. He saw a broken machine and a stranded traveler, but his mind painted a picture of a fallen angel coming to claim his soul. He was ready for a fight because he had been fighting a war in his head. For 40 years, he didn't realize that the curse wasn't something happening to him. It was something happening through him. He was the projector, and his life was the movie screen. He had spent decades tuning his radio to the station of hell, and then wondering why he never heard any good news. He was about to learn that the static, the silence, and the monsters were all coming from his own receiver. The alien wasn't there to hurt him. The alien was there because Ray had unwittingly invited him. Like attracts like. A broken man attracted a broken ship. A spirit heavy with gravity attracted a being trapped in gravity. It was a divine appointment, disguised as a nightmare. Ray Sullivan stood ankle-deep in the mud of the Texas pasture, the beam of his heavy maglite shaking violently in his grip. The rain slicked his hair to his forehead and ran down the back of his neck, cold as ice, but he was sweating. The adrenaline flooding his system was so potent he could taste copper in his mouth. He was staring at the nightmare he had, dreaded since childhood. But as his eyes adjusted to the eerie blue glow bathing the field, the electrician in him, part of his brain trained to look for logic in chaos, noticed something that didn't fit the narrative of the apocalypse. The demon wasn't breathing fire. It wasn't holding a pitchfork or a sword. It was holding its side, leaning heavily against the dark, slate-grey hull of the craft. And the craft itself, it didn't look like a chariot of hellfire. It looked like a machine. Specifically, Ray's flashlight beam caught a section of the hull that had slid open, revealing an access panel about chest-high. Inside, Ray didn't see swirling souls or magic runes. He saw conduits. He saw crystalline fuses. He saw thick, braided cables that looked suspiciously like high-voltage transmission lines. And right in the center, a bank of components was sparking, spitting angry arcs of white electricity into the wet air. It looked exactly like a breaker box that had taken a lightning strike. The realization hit Ray with a jolt of cognitive dissonance. Demons don't have wiring problems, a small, rational voice whispered in the back of his mind. Ghosts don't blow fuses. But the fear was louder. The figure standing at the base of the ramp took a step forward. It was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with limbs that were too long and a grace that was too fluid for a human. Its skin was a pale, pearlescent grey that seemed to absorb the moonlight. Large, dark, almond-shaped eyes locked onto Ray. Ray reacted with the only tool he had left: aggression. He raised the heavy pipe wrench in his right hand like a club. He stepped forward, putting his body between the creature and the road, a futile gesture of defense. "Stay back," Ray roared, his voice cracking with the strain. "I bind you. In the name of Jesus, I bind you." He shouted the words he had heard 1,000 times in the revival tent, expecting the creature to recoil, to hiss, to dissolve into smoke. That was the script. That was how the movie was supposed to play out. The alien didn't recoil. It didn't hiss. It simply stopped moving. It stood perfectly still in the rain, watching Ray with an expression that wasn't hunger and wasn't hate. It was ... patience. It was the look a parent gives a toddler having a tantrum. "I know what you are," Ray screamed, emboldened by the creature's stillness, but terrified by its silence. "You're a fallen one. You're a deceiver. You've come to take my soul, haven't you? Well, you can't have it. I'm covered by the blood. You hear me? I'm covered." Ray was hyperventilating now. He was projecting 40 years of failure, 40 years of loneliness, and 40 years of religious terror onto the being standing 10 feet away. He was vibrating with the frequency of pure, distilled anger. He wanted the creature to attack. He wanted a fight. A fight would be simple. A fight would prove he was right. But the creature did the one thing Ray couldn't handle. It asked for help. It didn't speak with a mouth. It didn't open its lips. Instead, a sensation bloomed in the center of Ray's chest. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. It felt like a heavy weight being lifted off his shoulders. It felt like the moment the fever breaks. It felt like ... peace. "We do not want your soul, Ray Sullivan," the voice echoed in his mind. It was clear, resonant, and utterly devoid of malice. It sounded like the vibration of a tuning fork. "We require your hands. The storm surge has ruptured the primary induction coupling. The magnetic stabilizers are failing. We are falling out of phase." Ray lowered the wrench an inch. The voice wasn't screaming. It wasn't lying. It was technical. "Get out of my head," Ray shouted, clutching his temples with his free hand. "That's how you do it. That's how you trick us. You whisper lies." The alien took another step, moving into the circle of light from Ray's flashlight. Ray saw that the being was trembling. A thin trickle of violet fluid was leaking from a seal on its suit. It was hurt. It was vulnerable. "If I wished to harm you," the entity projected, "I could have stopped your heart before you stepped out of your vehicle. I could have paralyzed you. I could have wiped your memory. I have done none of these things." The logic cut through Ray's panic like a knife. It was true. A being capable of shutting down his truck from a mile away could have killed him instantly. Yet, here they were, standing in the mud, talking. "I am a traveler," the entity continued. "I am an observer of this sector. My vessel was struck by an electromagnetic discharge from your atmosphere, lightning, as you call it. It was random. It was physics. There is no war here, Ray, only a broken circuit." The creature gestured slowly to the sparking panel. "I cannot repair it. My physiology is not compatible with the raw current in this state. But you work with the arc. You understand the flow. I see your mind. I see the schematics you carry. You can bridge the connection." Ray looked at the panel. He looked at the creature. He looked at the wrench in his hand. He was standing at the crossroads of his entire life. One path was the path of fear. It was the path he had walked for 58 years. It was the path that said everything was a threat, everyone was an enemy, and God was a judge waiting to drop the gavel. If he chose this path, he would run. He would get in his truck, lock the doors, and pray until the sun came up. He would survive, but he would remain a victim. He would tell the story for the rest of his life about how he escaped the devil, feeding his own paranoia until it consumed him. The other path was the path of compassion. It was the path that said maybe, just maybe, the universe wasn't out to get him. It was the path that recognized suffering even in the eyes of a stranger from the stars, chose to alleviate it. It was the path of the Samaritan. Ray looked at the alien's eyes again. He expected to see the abyss. Instead, he saw a reflection of his own exhaustion. He saw a being that was just as stranded, just as cold, and just as far from home as he was. "Why me?" Ray whispered, his voice trembling. "Why did you pick me?" "I did not pick you," the entity replied softly. "You were the only light on the road, and you are the only one who knows how to fix the light." Ray looked down at his boots, caked in mud. He thought about his son, Michael. He thought about the silence between them. He realized that for 5 years he had been waiting for Michael to apologize, waiting for Michael to fix the connection. Ray had been the one with the power to pick up the phone, but he hadn't. He had let the circuit remain broken because of his pride, because of his fear of rejection. Here was a broken circuit right in front of him, and for the first time in years, he had the power to fix it. Ray let out a long, shuddering breath. The anger drained out of him, leaving him feeling hollow but steady. He shoved the wrench back into his belt loop. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his insulated screwdriver and his wire strippers. "If you try anything," Ray warned, pointing a calloused finger at the 7-foot-tall extraterrestrial, "if you even blink wrong, I'm gonna brain you with this wrench. You understand?" The alien inclined its head in a gesture of submission. "Understood. The bypass must be bridged across the tertiary relay. Be careful. The current is wild." Ray walked past the alien. He stepped up to the open panel of the ship. The heat radiating from it was intense. The hum was deafening. He shined his light inside. It was alien technology, yes, crystals, and strange alloys, but the principle was universal. Energy needed to flow from point A to point B, and the bridge was burned out. "It's a standard series circuit," Ray muttered to himself, the familiarity of the job calming his nerves. "Just a glorified toaster oven." He reached in. He wasn't trembling anymore. He was working. He was doing the one thing he was good at. He was bringing the light back, but as he twisted the alien wires together, feeling the hum of a star drive vibrate through his fingertips. Ray didn't realize that the real repair wasn't happening in the ship. It was happening in his chest. He had just broken the first rule of his own fear-based religion. He had negotiated with the demon, and he had found a brother. The negotiation was over. Now, the revelation could begin. Ray Sullivan wiped the rain from his eyes and leaned into the open belly of the starship. Up close, the demon's chariot looked a lot less like a supernatural entity and a lot more like a nightmare of industrial design. The panel was a mess of fused circuitry and crystalline relays that pulsed with a faint, dying light. But Ray knew electricity. He knew that whether it was a toaster in a trailer park or a warp drive from Alpha Centauri, energy had to follow the path of least resistance. He traced the burnt-out coupling with his screwdriver. The primary induction coil was slag. The ship had taken a direct hit from a lightning bolt, frying the gate that regulated the power flow. It was a billion-dollar machine grounded by a 10-cent fuse problem. "I can't fix the crystal," Ray grunted, talking more to himself than the 7-foot alien standing silently behind him. "I don't have the parts, but I can bypass the regulator. It'll run hot. It might burn out your secondary systems if you push it too hard, but it'll get you off the ground." He didn't wait for permission. He grabbed his wire strippers and cut into the thick, braided cable that looked like the main power feed. The insulation was tough, like Kevlar, but Ray sawed through it. He stripped the ends, exposing the core. It wasn't copper. It was a bundle of translucent fiber optic filaments that glowed white when the air touched them. "Weird," Ray muttered. He twisted the alien filaments together with the rough efficiency of a man who had fixed 1,000 blowouts in the rain. He used his roll of black electrical tape good, old 3 meters vinyl tape from Earth, to wrap the connection. It was ridiculous. It was sublime. A piece of human trash holding together the technology of the stars. "Try it now," Ray shouted over his shoulder, stepping back from the panel. The alien didn't move a muscle, but the ship responded instantly. A deep, resonant thrum vibrated through the mud, shaking Ray's boots. The faint blue light on the hull flared, turning a brilliant, blinding azure. The sparks stopped. The hum smoothed out into a steady, harmonious frequency that felt less like a machine and more like a choir holding a single note. It was fixed. Ray stood there, chest heaving, holding his wire strippers like a smoking gun. He felt a surge of pride, the pure, unadulterated satisfaction of a tradesman who had done the job. For a moment, he forgot the fear. He forgot the demons. He was just Ray Sullivan, the best damn electrician in the county. He turned to face the traveler. The being was looking at the panel, then at Ray. Its large eyes narrowed slightly, an expression Ray interpreted as respect. "The flow is stabilized," the voice echoed in Ray's mind. "Crude, but effective. You understand the arc." Ray wiped his greasy hands on his jeans. The adrenaline was fading, and the reality of the situation was crashing back in. He was standing in a field with a monster. He had just helped it, and now he wanted his payment. Not money, answers. "I did my part," Ray said, his voice hard, stepping closer until he was looking up at the creature. "I fixed your ship. Now you fix my head." The alien waited, motionless. "You said you aren't a demon," Ray continued, the anger creeping back into his tone. "But you know about them. You said my question was close to the truth. So tell me, if you aren't a fallen angel, what are they? Because I know they're real. I feel them. I've felt them watching me my whole life. The alien gestured to a dry patch of ground beneath the ship's overhang. Sit, Ray Sullivan. The repair is done. Now we must repair the understanding. Ray hesitated, then sat on his toolbox. The alien remained standing, looking out into the rainy darkness. Your Bible calls them fallen angels, the entity began. Your ancestors called them demons, jinn. You have many names for the same phenomenon. You imagine them as soldiers who rebelled against a king and were cast down into a pit of fire. This is a story for children. It is a metaphor that you have mistaken for history. The alien turned its gaze to Ray to understand what they are. You must stop thinking in terms of morality and start thinking in terms of density. In this universe, everything is frequency. The creator of the source is the highest frequency. It is pure, rapid, expanding light. It is the vibration of unity. When a consciousness is aligned with truth and love, it is light. It floats. It ascends. The entity pointed a long finger at the mud. But consciousness has free will. It can choose to contract. It can choose to separate. When a spirit chooses anger, hatred, greed, or the desire to control others, it slows down. Its vibration drops. It becomes dense. It becomes heavy. A fallen angel, the alien declared, is simply a spirit that has lowered its frequency so much that it has become trapped in the gravity well of the lower dimensions. They did not fall from the sky, Ray. They sank. They sank into the mud of their own negativity. They are not monsters created by the devil. They are consciousnesses, just like you who have become addicted to the vibration of separation. Ray frowned, trying to wrap his mind around the concept. So they're just heavy ghosts. They are addicts, the alien corrected. And this is why they are dangerous. When a spirit disconnects from the source, from the light, it loses its infinite power supply. It starts to starve. It needs energy to survive. But because it has cut itself off from the generator, it must steal energy from others. The realization hit Ray. They feed on us. They feed on low frequency, the alien said. They cannot digest love. Love is too fast. It burns them. They cannot digest peace. Peace is too smooth. It gives them no grip. They need the jagged, chaotic energy of fear, anger, lust, and despair. That is their food source. So, they roam the physical plane, looking for generators. They look for humans who are broadcasting the signal they need. Ray felt a cold chill run down his spine, despite the humidity. Broadcasting. This brings us to you, Ray, the entity said, its mental voice becoming gentle but firm. You asked if I was a demon because you feel surrounded by them. You feel hunted. You are right. You are being hunted, but not because you are special, and not because you are cursed. The alien leaned down, bringing its face level with Ray's. You are being hunted because you are offering a free buffet. Excuse me. Ray bristled, his defensive walls shooting up. Look at your life, the entity challenged. Look at your mind for the last 10 years. What is the dominant signal you send out? Is it hope? Is it gratitude? Ray looked away. He saw the empty whiskey bottles. He heard the screaming matches with his wife. He felt the cold, hard knot of hatred he carried for his son's silence. No, the alien answered for him. It is anger. It is resentment. It is a deep, thrumming frequency of I am a victim. You wake up angry. You go to sleep afraid. You replay your betrayals like a favorite movie. You cherish your wounds. This is the law of resonance, the entity explained. Like attracts like. In physics, if you strike a tuning fork of a certain pitch, every other tuning fork of that same pitch in the room will start to vibrate. You, Ray Sullivan, are a massive tuning fork vibrating at the frequency of anger, and the spirits that are trapped in that same frequency, they hear you. They are drawn to you. They do not come to destroy you. They come to feed on the banquet you set for them every single day. Ray stood up, knocking his toolbox over. So it's my fault, he shouted, his voice echoing in the wet pasture. My wife leaves me, my kid hates me, my life falls apart, and you're telling me I asked for it, that I invited these things. You did not ask for the pain, the alien said calmly, but you have held on to it. You have turned your pain into an identity, and that identity is a beacon. You think these entities are forcing you to be angry. No, they are merely amplifying what is already there. Think, Ray, the voice urged. How many times have you been sitting alone, feeling a little bit annoyed, and suddenly a thought comes into your head that is darker, more violent, more hateful than you intended? A thought that says, they all hate you, or you should hurt them back. You think that is your thought. It is not. It is a whisper from the gallery. It is a parasite pouring gasoline on your spark, trying to turn it into a bonfire so it can feed on the heat. Ray went silent. He knew exactly what the alien was talking about. The intrusive thoughts, the sudden rages that seemed to come from nowhere. The nights where he lay in bed, spiraling into a darkness that felt like it wasn't entirely his own. They amplify it, Ray whispered. They ride the wave, the alien confirmed. And the more you react, the more they feed. The more they feed, the stronger they get. And the stronger they get, the more they can influence your reality. It is a feedback loop, Ray. You are trapped in a cycle of your own making. You built the haunted house, and then you invited the ghosts in. Ray leaned against the truck, feeling the weight of the truth crushing him. It was easier when it was a curse. It was easier when it was just bad luck or God's will. Admitting that he was the architect of his own hell was a pill too bitter to swallow. So what do I do? Ray asked, his voice breaking. If I'm the problem, how do I stop it? I can't just stop being angry. I've been angry for 20 years. It's who I am. It is who you have practiced being, the alien corrected. But the machine can be You just fixed a starship, Ray. You bypassed a burnt regulator to restore the flow of light. Do you not think you can do the same for your own soul? The trap is fear, the entity continued. And I must warn you, the biggest trick these entities play is not possessing you. It is making you afraid of them. Because fear is the lowest frequency of all. Fear is the master key that opens every door in your psyche. Fear, Ray repeated, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. He stood up from his toolbox, the old defensive posture returning. You don't understand. I was raised to fear them. The preacher said fear is healthy. It keeps you vigilant. If you aren't afraid of the devil, you aren't paying attention. It's my shield. The alien looked at Ray with a profound, almost tragic sadness. And that, Ray, is the greatest deception. The entity stepped out from the shelter of the ship's overhang, allowing the drizzle to touch its suit. To fear a predator is natural. It triggers adrenaline. It helps you run. But to fear a parasite, that is fatal. Because in the realm of frequency, fear is not a shield. Fear is a beacon. The alien projected an image into Ray's mind, a dark, turbulent ocean. In the center was a small boat tray. Surrounding the boat were sharks. When the man in the boat sat still, the sharks ignored him. But when the man panicked, thrashing in the water, screaming in terror, the vibrations traveled through the water. The sharks turned. They swarmed. Think of the physics, the alien explained. Fear is a vibration. It is a low, chaotic, erratic signal. It screams, I am vulnerable, I am weak, I am disconnected from the light. When you live in constant terror of these entities, you are broadcasting their favorite song. You are literally telling them where you are. You are setting the table and ringing the dinner bell. Ray felt the blood drain from his face. So, praying against them, screaming at them. If you scream in anger, you feed them, the entity said. If you scream in fear, you feed them. They do not care about your words, Ray. They care about your energy. You can shout Jesus all day long, but if your heart is pounding with terror while you say it, the terror is what they hear. They drink the panic and ignore the name. You have been fighting fire with gasoline. Ray leaned back against the cold metal of his truck. He felt sick. He thought about the nights he spent huddled under his covers, clutching his Bible, shaking with dread, waiting for a demon to attack. He thought about the screaming matches with the empty air. He realized now that he hadn't been fighting a war. He had been running a buffet. I thought I was being a warrior, Ray whispered, his voice breaking. I thought I was standing in the gap. You were standing in the mud, the alien corrected gently, and you were sinking. This is the trap of your religious conditioning. By teaching you to obsess over the darkness, to talk about it, to fear it, to look for it behind every door they have tied you to it. You become what you behold, Ray. If you stare into the abyss long enough, you start to vibrate at the frequency of the abyss. The alien moved closer, its presence now feeling less like an intruder and more like a mirror. But the feeding is only the beginning. You must understand the mechanism of influence. You worry about possession. You worry about a demon taking over your body like a driver hijacking a car. This is rare. It is inefficient. Why hijack the car when you can simply whisper directions to the driver? Ray frowned. Whisper. Thought injection, the entity declared. This is how they destroy you. They do not need to enter you. They only need to stand in your aura and project thoughts into your mental field. And because you are vibrating at their frequency, the frequency of anger and shamu, accept these thoughts as your own. Tell me, Ray, the alien asked, when your son stopped calling you. What did the voice in your head say? Ray closed his eyes. The memory was visceral. He could hear it as clearly as if it were yesterday. He hates you. He thinks you're a failure. You're a worthless old man. You deserve to be alone. Don't call him. Reject him before he rejects you again. It said I was worthless, Ray mumbled. It said he despised me. And did that voice sound like you? Yes. Are you sure? The entity pressed. Or did it sound ... colder? Did it sound repetitive? Did it sound like a tape loop playing your worst insecurities over and over again? Ray's eyes snapped open. It was a loop. It wouldn't stop. It woke me up at 3 a.m. That was not you, the alien revealed. That was the parasite. That was the amplifier. You felt a spark of sadness, which is natural. But the entity saw that spark and blew on it. It whispered lies to turn your sadness into despair. It whispered lies to turn your confusion into hatred. It wanted you to isolate yourself, because a lonely prey is easier to feed on. They are the architects of isolation, the alien continued. They know that if you call your son, if you forgive your wife, if you laugh with a friend, your frequency will rise. You will become light, and if you become light, they starve. So they work tirelessly to keep you in the dark. They tell you that you are a victim. They tell you that you are right to be angry. They stroke your ego and starve your soul, and you listen. You listen because you think it is your own mind talking. Ray slid down the side of his truck until he was sitting in the mud. He put his head in his hands. The revelation was shattering. He looked back at the last 5 years of his life, the stubborn pride, the refusal to apologize, the bridges he had burned. He had thought he was being strong. He had thought he was protecting his dignity. But in reality, he had been a puppet. He had been manipulated by invisible parasites that grew fat on his misery. I ruined it, Ray sobbed, the tears finally coming hot and fast. I ruined everything. Michael, ... Ellen. I pushed them away. I thought I was defending myself, but I was just ... feeding the dark. The alien watched him, its large eyes reflecting the rain. It did not offer pity. Pity is a low frequency. Instead, it offered clarity. You were asleep, Ray. You cannot blame a man for sleepwalking. But now you are awake. The question is, what will you do with the morning? Ray looked up, wiping the snot and rain from his face. But God, ... He stammered. If this is happening, where is God? I prayed, I begged. Why didn't he stop them? Why didn't he clear the static? The alien looked up at the stormy sky, then back at Ray. This is the final piece of the puzzle. The distance of God. You feel that God is far away, the entity explained. You feel that he is silent. You think he is punishing you. This is incorrect. God, the source, is broadcasting constantly. The signal of love, of guidance, of abundance, ... It is It never stops. It is the loudest thing in the universe. But you cannot hear FM radio on an AM receiver. The alien said simply, God vibrates at the highest frequency. Unconditional love, gratitude, joy, you. Ray have been vibrating at the lowest frequency. Fear, anger, victimhood. It is a physics problem, not a moral one. You are simply out of range. You have tuned your radio to the station of despair, and you are angry that you cannot hear the music of heaven. God did not move. You did. The entities, the alien gestured to the empty air. They occupy the space between. They create the static. They want you to believe the silence is God's rejection. But the silence is just mud on the antenna. Ray looked at the ship, now glowing brightly with a steady, rhythmic blue light. He had fixed the ship by bypassing the burnt regulator. He had restored the flow. I need to retune, Ray whispered. I need to change the channel. Yes, the alien agreed. You cannot fight the darkness with a shotgun, Ray. You cannot fight it with hate. You cannot fight it with fear. Darkness does not have a physical form you can shoot. It is the absence of light. There is only one weapon that works, the entity said, extending a hand to help Ray up from the mud. And it is the one thing you have refused to use for 40 years. Ray took the alien's hand. The skin was cool, smooth, and vibrated with a subtle energy. He stood up, his legs shaky but his mind clearing for the first time in a decade. What is it? Ray asked. What is the weapon? Elevation, the alien said. You do not defeat the demons, Ray. You rise above them. You change your frequency to a level where they cannot exist. You make yourself poisonous to them. Let me show you the formula, the alien said, walking Ray toward the ramp of the ship. Let me show you how to turn on the light. Ray stood at the base of the ramp, his boots sinking into the wet earth, but his eyes looking up. The blue light of the ship reflected in his irises, washing away the years of grey exhaustion. He felt lighter, as if the gravity around him had been dialed down, but he was still searching for a physical tool, something he could hold in his hands to fight the darkness. The alien seemed to read his thoughts, projecting its mental voice with the precision of a diamond cutting glass. You asked for a weapon, Ray, but you are thinking of swords and shields. You are thinking of conflict. In the higher dimensions, we do not fight darkness. We do not wrestle with it. We simply turn on the light. The entity raised a hand, and a small holographic projection appeared in the mist between them. It showed a chaotic swarm of dark, jagged shapes, the entities moving frenetically, crashing into each other. Then, a single point of bright, golden light appeared in the center. The dark shapes didn't attack the light. They fled. They scattered to the edges of the projection, unable to touch the gold. This is the physics of holiness, the alien explained. It is not magic. It is density. Darkness is heavy, slow, and dense. Light is fast, high, and fine. They cannot occupy the same space at the same time. If you fill a room with light, the darkness does not fight back. It does not argue. It simply ceases to exist in that space. Ray watched the hologram, the gears in his mind turning. So, he asked, I just need to be brighter. You need to elevate, the entity corrected. You need to change the rate at which your consciousness vibrates. Right now, you are vibrating at the frequency of anger and fear. The entities vibrate at this level. You are visible to them. You are tangible to them. You are swimming in their pool. But if you shift your frequency to love, gratitude, or peace, you disappear from their reality. You become invisible to the wolf. You become like smoke to a rock. You pass right through them, and they cannot touch you. This is the only true protection. Not a wall, but an altitude. Ray shook his head, a cynical smile tugging at his lips. That sounds nice. Just be happy. Just love everyone. Do you know what I've been through? Do you know what it's like to have your son look at you like you're garbage? Anger isn't a choice. It's a reflex. Anger is a reflex, the alien agreed. But holding on to it is a choice. And it is a choice that opens the door. The alien stepped closer, its presence becoming stern, almost surgical, as if preparing to lance a boil. Let us talk about the open door in your chest. Let us talk about Michael. Ray flinched, his hands balling into fists. Don't. We must, the entity insisted. You are angry at him. You feel betrayed. You replay the memory of him leaving you over and over again. Every time you replay it, you create a cord of energy connecting you to that moment of pain. You keep the wound fresh. You keep the blood flowing. And the entities, they smell the blood. Anger is an open door, Ray. Every time you sit in your truck and curse your son's name, you are unlocking the back door of your house and shouting, "Come in." There is pain here. You are inviting the scavengers to feast on your resentment. So I should just forgive him. Ray snapped, his voice cracking. He doesn't deserve it. He abandoned me. Forgiveness has nothing to do with him. The alien's voice thundered in Ray's mind, startling him. This is the mistake of your world. You think forgiveness is a gift you give to the person who hurt you. You think it is saying, what you did was okay. No, forgiveness is a technical act. It is the act of cutting the cord. It is the act of closing the door. When you forgive, you are not saying he was right. You are saying, I am no longer willing to leak energy into the past. You are saying, I am no longer willing to keep this door open for the parasites. You do not forgive the wolf for the wolf's sake. Ray, you forgive the wolf so you can stop living in the woods. Ray looked down at his hands, caked in mud and grease. He thought about the 5 years of silence, the poison he swallowed every day hoping it would kill his son. It's hard, Ray whispered. I don't know how to let it go. You do not let it go, the alien said. You'll replace it. You cannot simply remove a negative frequency. You must replace it with a positive one. Otherwise, a vacuum is created and the darkness will rush back in. This brings us to the second tool. The alien pointed to the sky, where the storm clouds were breaking, revealing a patch of stars. You told me God was silent, the entity said. You told me you prayed for help and heard nothing. That is because you were praying in the frequency of lack. You were begging. You were saying, I do not have. I am poor. I am cursed. The universe is a mirror, Ray. When you scream, I lack, the universe reflects you lack. It gives you more poverty. It gives you more silence. To hear the signal of the Creator, you must tune the receiver to the frequency of abundance. And the fastest way to do that is gratitude. Gratitude. Ray scoffed. For what? My broken truck. My empty bank account. For the breath in your lungs. The entity countered instantly. For the fact that your heart beats without you commanding it. For the rain that waters the grass. For the wrench in your hand that allowed you to save a starship. Gratitude is not a social nicety, Ray. It is a cosmic coordinate. When you say thank you, even for the smallest thing, you are sending a signal that says, I have enough. I am supported. I am connected. This signal aligns you with the source. It tunes your radio to the station of God. Try it. Right now. Find one thing to be thankful for. Just one. Ray hesitated. He looked around the muddy field. He looked at his truck, old, beat up, but faithful. He thought about the fact that he was alive, standing in front of a miracle. My hands, Ray muttered, looking at his calloused palms. I'm thankful that I know how to fix things. I'm thankful I have a trade. Feel it, the entity urged. Don't just say it. Feel the appreciation for the skill in your fingers. Let that feeling expand. Ray focused. He remembered the satisfaction of twisting the wires. He remembered the pride of the fix. A small warmth started in his chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was ... competence. It was dignity. There, the alien whispered. Do you feel that shift? That lightness? That is 540 hertz. That is the frequency of gratitude. In this moment, right now, the entities cannot touch you. You are too hot for them. You are shining. Ray took a deep breath. The air tasted sweeter. The knot in his stomach, the one that had been there for 8 years, loosened just a fraction. So that's the protection, Ray realized. Not a shotgun. Not a spell, just ... Staying in that feeling. It is a discipline, the entity warned. It is mental hygiene. You brush your teeth every day to prevent decay. You must wash your mind every day with gratitude and forgiveness to prevent spiritual decay. If you stop, the dirt returns. The parasites return. The alien turned to look back at the ship, checking the diagnostic lights. The blue glow was steady now. The repair held. Your religions meant well in the beginning, the entity observed. Looking back at Ray, they wanted to teach you to be good. But somewhere along the way, they realized that fear is a better mechanism for control than love. It is easier to herd sheep with a wolf than with a shepherd. They taught you to fear the devil so you would need the church. They taught you to fear hell so you would pay the tithe. They weaponized the darkness. And in doing so, they trapped billions of souls in the very frequency they claimed to save them from. Do not fear the fallen, Ray. Pity them, Ray asked, surprised. The things that tormented me. Yes, the alien said softly. Imagine being so lost, so disconnected from the warmth of the source, that you must feed on the misery of others just to survive. Imagine the hunger. Imagine the cold. They are not kings of hell. They are beggars in the alley. When you see them not as monsters, but as starving, lost spirits, you lose your fear. And when you lose your fear, they lose their power. And know this, the entity added, its eyes reflecting the galaxies above. Even they are not lost forever. The universe is a school, Ray. Some students are slow. Some are stubborn. Some sit in the corner and refuse to learn. But eventually, everyone graduates. Even the darkest shadow will eventually turn back to face the sun. It may take 1,000,000 years, but gravity always yields to light. The ramp of the ship began to retract with a low hiss. The repair was complete. The lesson was delivered. I must go, the alien said. The window of departure is opening. Ray stepped back. He felt a sudden pang of loss. This creature, this stranger, had given him more peace in 1 hour than he had found in 50 years of church. Wait, Ray said. Will I see you again? That depends on you, the entity replied. We travel on the high currents. If you stay in the mud, we cannot reach you. If you learn to fly, if you keep your frequency high, our paths may cross. The alien paused at the top of the ramp. One last thing, Ray Sullivan. Your son, Michael, he is vibrating at the frequency of guilt. He thinks you hate him. He is waiting for a signal. Not a signal of anger, a signal of peace. You have the power to fix that circuit too. But you must be the one to dial the number. What if he doesn't answer? Ray asked, the old fear creeping in. Then you leave a message of love, the alien said simply, and you let it go. You do not control the receiver. You only control the broadcast. Send the signal, Ray, and then close the door on the outcome. The ramp closed, sealing the seamless hole. The blue light intensified, pulsing faster and faster until it whited out Ray's vision. The ship didn't shoot up like a rocket. It simply ceased to be there. One moment it was heavy and solid. The next it vanished into a streak of light, leaving only the smell of ozone and a circle of dry grass in the wet pasture. Ray stood alone in the dark. But it wasn't the same dark. The rain had stopped. The clouds parted, revealing the full moon. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. Ray walked back to his truck. He opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. He looked at the shotgun in the passenger seat. It looked heavy. It looked useless. He reached over, picked it up, and unloaded it. He put the shells in the glove box and threw the gun in the back seat. Then he looked at his phone. It was dead, fried by the EMP of the ship's arrival. But Ray knew how to fix things. He plugged it into the truck charger. He turned a key. The truck roared to life. The alien had rebooted the battery. The phone screen lit up. 3 a.m. Ray scrolled through his contacts until he found the name Michael. His thumb hovered over the call button. The fear tried to rise. The fear of rejection. The fear of the past. He won't answer. He hates you. Ray closed his eyes. Observe. I feel fear. Neutralize. I do not consent to this fear. Broadcast. I choose love. I choose to cut the cord of anger. He tapped the button. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a click. A sleepy, confused voice on the other end. Dad, Ray smiled. Tears streamed down his face. But they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief. He wasn't in the mud anymore. He was flying. Hi, Mikey, Ray said, his voice steady and warm. I'm just calling to tell you. I'm sorry, and I love you. That's all. Go back to sleep, son. We can talk tomorrow. He hung up before Michael could respond. He didn't need the response. The act of calling was the victory. The door of anger was closed. The circuit was repaired. Ray put the truck in gear and drove out of the pasture, leaving the demons behind in the dark where they belonged. He had a lot of work to do. He had a frequency to maintain. Ray, Sullivan drove his truck out of the pasture and onto the blacktop of County Road 9 just as the first hint of dawn began to bleed into the eastern sky. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the world scrubbed clean and smelling of wet sagebrush and ozone. He rolled down the window, letting the cold morning air hit his face. It was the same road he had driven down 1,000 times before. It was the same beat-up Ford pickup with the cracked dashboard. But the man driving it was not the same man who had pulled over in the dark 6 hours ago. That Mantha, angry, terrified, cursed Ray Sullivan had died in the mud. The man driving now was someone new. He was a man who had looked into the face of the unknown and found not a monster, but a mirror. As the tires hummed against the asphalt, Ray glanced at the rearview mirror. He looked at the empty passenger seat where he used to keep the shotgun. For 40 years, he had carried that weapon, both the literal gun and the metaphorical weapons of anger, suspicion, and defensiveness, believing they kept him safe. He had believed the world was a battlefield and that he was a soldier behind enemy lines. He realized now, with a clarity that made him laugh out loud, that the war had been over for a long time. In fact, there never was a war. There was only a frequency mismatch. He hadn't been fighting demons. He had been drowning in his own gravity. The enemy wasn't attacking him. The enemy was simply attracted to the noise he was making. Ray thought about the alien's words. True protection is elevation. It sounded so simple, almost insultingly simple, yet it changed everything. He realized that for his entire life, he had been trying to solve a spiritual problem with physical tools. He had tried to fix his loneliness by working harder. He had tried to fix his fear by buying guns. He had tried to fix his anger by shouting louder. He had been trying to sweep away the darkness with a broom, not realizing that all he had to do was turn on the light switch. The truck crested a hill, and the sun broke over the horizon, painting the Texas plains in blinding gold. Ray squinted, but he didn't look away. He felt a vibration in his chest, the physical sensation of warmth that started in his heart and radiated out to his fingertips. It was the frequency of 540 hertz. It was gratitude. He wasn't grateful for anything specific, not for money, not for a fixed truck, but simply for the fact that he was part of the circuit again. He was online. He was connected. He realized that the curse he had carried for so long was actually a gift in disguise. The pain, the isolation, the fear, they were all pressure. They were the universe squeezing him, trying to force him to wake up. If his life had been easy, if his wife hadn't left, if his son hadn't stopped calling, he would have stayed asleep. He would have remained a comfortable, low-frequency sleepwalker. The suffering had forced him to the edge of the cliff so that he could learn he knew how to fly. The demons hadn't destroyed him. They had inadvertently initiated him. They had pushed him until he had no choice but to rise above them. Ray pulled into the driveway of his trailer. It was a rusted metal box in a weeds-choked lot, the kind of place people looked at with pity. But as Ray stepped out of the truck, he didn't see a dump. He saw a sanctuary. He walked inside. The air was still stale, the sink was still full of dishes, but the atmosphere felt different. The heaviness was gone. The shadows in the corners didn't look like lurking monsters anymore. They just looked like shadows. Ray walked to the kitchen, picked up a dirty plate, and started washing it. He moved with a deliberate slowness, feeling the warm water, smelling the soap. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for the water. Thank you for the soap. Thank you for the plate." He was practicing the discipline. He was tuning the instrument. Later that day, Ray went to the grocery store. Usually, he walked with his head down, avoiding eye contact, judging the people he saw, the loud teenagers, the tired mothers, the rich ranchers. He projected his anger onto them, assuming they were all part of the hostile world that had rejected him. But today, he looked up. He saw a woman arguing with a cashier, her face twisted in rage. The old Ray would have thought, what a miserable person. The new Ray looked at her and saw the frequency. He saw the heavy, dark cloud of stress and fear hanging over her. He didn't judge her. He recognized her. He knew exactly what it felt like to be trapped in that vibration. He felt a sudden surge of compassion. He caught her eye and smiled a genuine, warm smile. She stopped shouting. She looked confused, then embarrassed, and finally she softened. Her shoulders dropped. Ray had just performed a minor exorcism in the checkout line. Not with holy water, but with a smile. He was beginning to understand his new power. The phone rang that evening. Ray stared at it. It was Michael. Ray picked it up, his hand steady. They talked for an hour. It wasn't a perfect conversation. There was still pain, still history to navigate. But the silence was broken. The door was open. Ray listened without defending himself. He listened without trying to be right. He simply held the space, broadcasting love, refusing to drop down into the frequency of guilt or blame. When they hung up, Ray sat in his armchair and watched the dust motes dancing in the shaft of sunlight coming through the window. He realized he was free. He wasn't free because his problems were solved. He still had bills. He still lived in a trailer. But he was free because he was no longer a victim of his own emotional weather. He was the weatherman. He controlled the climate inside the house. Regardless of the storm outside, the story of Ray Sullivan is not just a story about a UFO encounter in Texas. It is a story about you. Why are you watching this video? Why did you click on a title about fallen angels and frequency? It's not because of the algorithm. It's because you feel it too. You feel the heaviness. You feel the curse. You look at the world, the anger in the news, the division in your family, the fear in the streets, and you feel like you are under attack. You feel like there is a war on for your soul. And you are right. There is a war. But it is not being fought with armies, and it is not being fought by demons with pitchforks. It is a frequency war. The battlefield is your own nervous system. The enemy is not the politician you hate, or the ex-partner who hurt you, or the secret society running the world. The enemy is the vibration of fear itself. The enemy is the part of you that believes you are small, helpless, and alone. Ray's alien visitor revealed the ultimate secret of the Matrix. You are not a victim of all-powerful external forces. You are a victim of your own emotional broadcast. The entities, the bad luck, the recurring patterns of failure, they are just the echo. You are the voice. As long as you vibrate at the frequency of I am a victim, the universe will send you persecutors to validate that belief. As long as you vibrate at the frequency of I am afraid, the universe will send you monsters to justify that fear. But the moment, the absolute second, you choose to change the dial, the reality changes. You have the power to starve the demons. You have the power to make yourself invisible to the darkness. And you don't need a spaceship to do it. You don't need a theology degree. You just need to make the hardest choice a human being can make. The choice to stop suffering. The choice to drop the heavy bags of resentment you have been carrying for 20 years. The choice to forgive the people who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. This is the elevation formula. It is the only shield that works. When you wake up tomorrow and the news tries to sell you fear, do not buy it. Observe it, neutralize it, and broadcast peace. When someone cuts you off in traffic and the old anger flares up, catch it. See it as a parasite trying to feed, and starve it with a smile. When you feel the weight of the world crushing you, stop and find one thing, just one thing, to be grateful for. That gratitude is your elevator pass. It is the button that takes you to the penthouse, far above the smog of the lower dimensions. Ray Sullivan is out there right now, somewhere in Texas, fixing lights. He's just a man in a truck, but he is also a lighthouse. He is holding the frequency for his town, for his family, and for the world. And now the torch is passed to you. You know the truth. The fallen angels are just heavy spirits waiting for you to get down in the mud with them. Don't go down. Rise up if this story resonated with your spirit. If you felt the truth of the frequency in your bones, then you are ready to be an anchor. You are ready to stop fighting the darkness and start being the light. Do not let this feeling fade when the video ends. Carry it with you into the kitchen, into the office, into the traffic jam. I want you to make a declaration right now. A declaration to the universe, to the entities, and to yourself. Go to the comments and write, I choose to rise. Let the algorithm know. Let the world know. Let the shadows know that you are no longer food. You are a generator.